And so the title of my talk is, how did the greatest Byzantine basilica got dragged into a culture war in Turkey? Because that's kind of my take on what's happening. I looked on, I'm no historian, to be clear. One page that I found really very beautiful pictures to show you today is from a licensed tour guide in Istanbul. His name is Serhat Engül. He has a nice web page. And if you ever go to Istanbul, you can book him for group tours or individual tours. So he seems to know his stuff. I kind of cross-checked. I saw that the Greek Orthodox Church has its own Wikipedia page on Hagia Sophia. And so I cross-checked the information so I make sure I give you relevant, accurate information to the best of my ability. So this church is in Istanbul. Istanbul was the old Constantinople. Constantinople was the capital of what we call the Byzantine Empire. Constantine, the emperor, is the first who converted into Catholicism, well, Christianism. I don't think that it's Catholic or not at the time. But so that's how the Roman Empire became Christian. Until then, Christians were persecuted and hiding. When he converted, he also moved the capital from Rome to this little place. I'll show you on a bigger map where that is. There was already a Greek town, but he just remodeled and recreated a Roman-style town and called it Constantinople. So this town was conveniently located. It was surrounded by sea, and then there were walls to protect it from invaders. It had all the things you would find in a ancient Roman town: hippodromes, forums, aqueducts, cisterns for fresh water, and for the first time, churches, because now it was the state religion. The first 3 churches that were built, so in the order, it was the Church of the Holy Peace, that's the Hagia Irene. Hagia means saint in ancient Greek, apparently. The Church of Hagia Sophia, it's the Holy Wisdom. That's the one we'll be talking about. And the Church of the Holy Apostles, that doesn't need any translation. Later on, as you know, the Ottoman Empire defeated the Byzantine Empire. And once they took Constantinople, it was over. Once they took Constantinople, they saved the first 2 churches, just converted them into mosques, but pretty well preserved them. Unfortunately, in the fight to take Constantinople, this Church of Holy Apostles was destroyed, and nothing was built in its place. Currently, the church that we know as Hagia Sophia is actually the 3rd church built at that site. It's not the original one Constantine had ordered. But this Hagia Irene is also still there. And both of them, since Turkey became a republic at the end of the Ottoman Empire, with the secular policies of the republic, all the sites like these were converted into museums. So this little corner of Istanbul, current Istanbul, actually stretches all the way from North Sea, the Black Sea in the north that we don't see in the map, all the way to what we call the Sea of Marmara, which is a small pocket of water that, relatively small, connects the Black Sea into the Mediterranean. So north of Istanbul is directly Crimea, pretty much, if you cross the Black Sea on the other side. So Istanbul now spans both sides of this canal we call Bosphorus, the European and the Asian sides. And this really here is the natural boundary between the continent of Europe and Asia. And so Istanbul currently is like 25 million people. It's a very, very dense, very big metropole. And this little corner here in the south is what was the Constantinople we saw in the first map. coming back to history, so you all know that the Roman Empire was actually divided. That happened at the end of the reign of Constantine. And so the east and the west part both identified as Roman Empire. They would call themselves Roman. This term that we call Byzantine is actually an anachronism. They did not call themselves Byzantines. They were Romans. The east side was Greek speaking. The Christian side was Greek speaking. The west side was Latin speaking. And as you know, the Latin side, the west side, collapsed. But the east side lasted for, well, so the division happened at the end of the 4th century AD. And technically the Byzantine Empire at its best moment, it still spanned, you see, all around the Mediterranean Sea. But again, under the pressure of the invasions from the east, and that was the Seljuk Empire and the Ottomans, slowly but surely it ended up collapsing. But it lasted all the way from 95 to 1453 is the fall of Constantinople. That's typically recognized as the end of the Byzantine Empire. So the church we're talking about has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1993. United Nations put a lot of money in there to restore it, to upgrade where it's necessary. In fact, when it was converted into mosque for the, as you may know, for the Muslims, any representation of holy people, prophets, their family members is forbidden. As a result, all the beautiful mosaics that were in this church, same for the Aya Irene, its sister church, were just plastered over, but they were beautifully preserved. While it was a mosque, it was plastered out. And while it was a museum, those plasters still were kept. And so under this restoration project with UNESCO, very gently they managed to remove those plasters and reveal very beautiful mosaics, as I will show below. So the thing you're looking at from inside, this church is the third church at that site that was built during Justinian's reign. It served as 900 years as the official site for the patriarch for the Orthodox Church. So the Greek Orthodox, for the Greek Orthodox, this is their Vatican. It's that important to them, this particular church. Imagine converting Vatican into a mosque. It would, I don't even want to imagine it, no. So, and then in the 500 years that it was under Ottoman Empire, it was a regular mosque. And in fact, this structure that lasted for so many centuries, can you believe we are in 2020, Istanbul is on one of the most active earthquake zones in the world. Is that Anatolian fault line is just as active as the San Andreas, to give you a comparison. And it survived so many earthquakes. It's just remarkable. In fact, structurally, architecturally, it was such a success. In the Ottoman years, there's a very famous architect that built beautiful mosques that are also, you know, jewels of the Istanbul skyline. And he was inspired by how they built the dome here. It gave him an idea of how to build the domes in all the mosques. The Blue Mosque, in fact, is very close to this Hagia Sophia. And not only this monument is there, but there's a very funny story. So in the Roman times, we see it in the very first, you see all these blue dots are actually cisterns. These are water, fresh water. You see even one that is right next to Hagia Sophia, So that thing here is now called, in Turkish, it's the Sunken Palace, Yerebatan Sarayı. Underneath this church is 3 feet beneath the ground, right? There are 336 columns, and there is a whole water cistern still today. And in fact, there's a scene from a James Bond movie from the 1960s. It's called From Russia with Love, where James Bond is being guided through like a secret passage. And the way it was discovered is very interesting, as I learned. So in the 16th century, a French physician just found, almost accidentally, a pair of stairs behind Hagia Sophia that dropped underneath, 30 feet underneath. He found a sunken palace and floated through its forest of 336 towering columns in a rowboat. And so that was the water supply for the city. Now, I mentioned there were 3 churches built at the site. The one that you're looking at is the 3rd one that's still holding. The one that Constantine built in 360 AD was called the Great Church, Megale Ecclesia. And it burned in a popular uprising. I didn't look what was the cause of the uprising. That happened during Theodosius' reign. So he built a 2nd one. You see, it took about 10 years to build that 2nd church on the side of the 1st one. So that one lasted over 100 years. But it was also burned down in a popular uprising. And that 2nd uprising happened during Justinian's reign. And Justinian wasn't as kind as Theodosius. What I read about that uprising is that he gathered all the rebels in the next door hippodrome and had them killed, had them decapitated. So not a very nice guy. But he wanted to show his power by building the biggest imposing structure he could for the 3rd church. And so this Hagia Sophia Church of the Holy Wisdom that's how it came about. And it's remarkable that this big building has been built in just 5 years. Now, granted, in the beginning, there wasn't all these additional domes, and obviously the minarets were added in the Ottoman Empire, but even those domes were added later on. The original structure was just a rectangular basilica with a dome in the center. Anything here I didn't say? So apparently it was truly the biggest cathedral in the world until St. Peter's Basilica was rebuilt. So it's been a museum for as long as, well, it's more than 80 years, right? So what is remarkable architecturally about this building is, again, its dome. Never until that point was a dome put on a rectangular building, and you know how to make the weight of the dome, hold on. So in fact, the first dome that was built collapsed in an earthquake. Then the architect figured out, well, they had volcanic rocks carried all the way from the Rhode Island, not the American Rhode Island, but the Greek Rhode Island in the Aegean Sea, with this volcanic rock, because volcanic rocks have all these air pockets in them. They're typically much less dense. So, and then they had the genius idea to build all these windows all around. And apparently that's how they also took away from some of the weight, and also for how much light this place gets. It's now beautiful how, I don't know if we have, right. So, you know how the old churches tend to be very dark, and this is not it, right? So all these, how they let all the light in, actually was a trick to make it structurally stable and even out the weight of the dome all around. And then they were the ones who first learned how to use these, they call it spherical triangles. Uh, these four corners here are how the weight of the dome is distributed on four pillars, and then some additional domes to help keep it all together. So architecturally, it's really a marvel when you read about it. And it's big. This dome is pretty much the same size as the dome of the Pantheon in Rome. It's one of the biggest. Now, it has those beautiful mosaics. We can go through a few of them if you want. So there are the guardian angels of the Constantinople. Apparently they were called the seraphim angels. I don't know much about them other than their guardian angels. But there are also beautiful, more holy pictures. Well, for example, one with the Emperor Leon. Apparently he was married 3 times. His wives died due to illnesses. When he wanted to marry a 4th time, he was met with opposition from the church. And in order to gain a church, well, he gave a big donation. Money buys everything, especially in the Byzantine time. And so to immortalize this donation, this mosaic is placed on top of the Imperial Gate. What they call the Imperial Gate is the one in the very first picture here. You see where that mosaic is, okay? And there are stones and marble all over the building. It's really a piece of art. So eventually Leon married again. Good for him. Well, so beautiful picture of the Virgin Mary with the child. And here, this is the picture of, I don't know which one is Constantine, which one is Justinian, but those are the 2 big emperors of the Byzantine era, important for Constantinople. Well, so this was interesting, the story that went with this. And again, those stories are not necessarily historical facts, but this guide, Serhat Ergül, just tells them as, rumors or popular beliefs more than historical facts. So this Empress Zoe was the one with the bloodline for the empire. And she was the unlucky one. She married 3 times. And each time her husband happened to die, they had to scratch and redo the face of the guy here again and again. The 3rd husband brought a mistress into the palace of the empress. And it was a big scandal. There was a popular uprising against that. And people were afraid that he might have her killed and that the blood lineage will be lost. But thank goodness that didn't happen. That's the story of this one. Now, why this has been on the news recently, and I have to say, like Aya Irini, the sister church that is also was converted into a mosque and then into a museum, is still a museum, and there is no talk of, thankfully, converting that into a mosque. In fact, Aya Irini is a very important concert hall in Istanbul. Every year there is a music festival, a very famous music festival. Very, very hard to get tickets, but it's just, they say that church has such an acoustic that, they don't even need any sound system, that people come and play, and it's a delight to listen to jazz or classic music in there. And so it's that museum is pretty much used not for guided tours, but as a music venue. I guess it makes enough money that Erdogan doesn't want to convert it into a mosque. So for this one, early July, he announced suddenly out of the blue You know, like everywhere else, Turkey has been under very strict stay-home orders due to COVID. They try to control it pretty well until June, because tourism is very important to Turkish economy, and so they have to make sure to make tourists feel safe, because we need that money. But now that it's summer and the tourists are coming anyway, who cares about COVID, right? Suddenly, Erdogan, who had the military industries to make sure people stay home, now suddenly he just in July had this church converted into mosque and ordered a big Friday prayer. According to my mom, there were 300,000 people praying in the streets all over the place around the church without any social distancing, without any mask. And she was there furious like hell because, you know, her age group, 65 and older, has been under literally house arrest. It's not, it's fair to say. And so for all the sacrifices they have done, to see this happening in the middle of a pandemic out of no reason, when it's the height of the tourist season, and, you know, why even go there? Nobody knows. But, you know, it's Erdogan. He thinks he's a king. He thinks he's above everything, and he thinks he calls the shots. He did not even bother calling UNESCO to let them know that all the money they have given for the restoration, no thank you, now we're going to convert it back into a church, a mosque. It's just mind-boggling is the least we can say. So the question is, why now? What's the hurry and why? I should say, throughout his all the years that Erdogan has been in power, he's been slowly but surely trying to dismantle all the secular heritage we got from Atatürk when the Republic was founded, and things like that. Atatürk was wise enough to recognize, well, this is a place that is holy for more than just Muslims, and the best way to have some kind of peace, especially with the Greeks, because as I said, this was the site of the Greek patriarch, the Orthodox Church highest ranking person. And so the only way we will have all these religions coexist in cities like Istanbul is to make them a museum. Then it's nobody's ownership, right? And of course, the Greek Orthodox Church is up in arms against it. Well, so Erdogan likes to pick up fights with all our, you know, secular heritage, unfortunately, because he wants to show himself that he is the one who defends all the Muslim values, whatever that means. Unfortunately, it couldn't be the worst time. There is already a lot of tension between Greece and Turkey over, you know, all the refugees, war refugees from Syria and Middle East in general that go through Turkey, cross in dingy boats towards Greece, hoping that they will get into the European Union. So the border between Turkey and Greece has been closed for a couple of years because of the refugee problem. But there has been these illegal crossings of the Mediterranean Sea into Greek islands and the mainland Greece. And Greece is very angry at Turkey for not keeping better control of their shores, basically. It is what it is, I guess. And then Turkey has been in an economic crisis well before this COVID hit. Most of it started from the moment there were American sanctions imposed on Iran, because Turkey had some trade relationship, obviously, but also we depend on energy on Iran. And so that started already economic crisis that got worse because Erdogan just doesn't know what he's doing. He got into fight. Erdogan a couple of years ago, if you remember, literally hijacked the evangelical priest who's been living peacefully in Turkey, doing his own business. And he tried to play this hostage diplomacy with this poor guy. And then Trump imposed some steel tariffs to, well, basically Erdogan wanted his main political opponent, this imam in Pennsylvania, Fethullah Gülen, to be extradited to Turkey, and America has been saying no to it. And so he captured that that evangelical priest, hoping they can swap, but it didn't work. And now, as far as I know, the priest is released and back in the US. And we got nothing for it. We just got hit with tariffs. So the economy in Turkey has really been down the drain for a while. Just to give you an idea, when Alex was born, so that was 2011, my mom came in 2012. Well, Turkish lira, it was still a 2-to-1 conversion between Turkish lira and an American dollar. Right now, $1 is worth over 7 lira, and it's increasing. I mean, there's an ongoing inflation, joblessness. By any indication, Turkey is headed for a long recession. And so when there is that kind of economic crisis, unfortunately, Erdogan does it, every other government before him did it. They try to point at enemies outside, right? And that enemy outside in Turkey is the Christianity in a general way. It's Greeks, it's Armenians, it's this paranoia they want to create anyway. And the worst possible moment for this crisis, manufactured crisis, is because I don't know if you read recently, that's all over the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. With there has been a recent discovery. Now there are natural gas reserves with the current technologies we can tap into, all the way from Egypt, Israel, Lebanon, Turkey, all have that eastern side of the Mediterranean Sea. Apparently there are offshore natural gas reserves. Whose they are, how it's going to be shared, who will exploit it. And of course, there's the Isle of Cyprus there. Cyprus is part of Greece. Turkey would like to take it and claim ownership, but it's Greek. There's a little pocket of it belonging to Turkey. I mean, this natural gas, unfortunately, I think it's going to, on its own, create a lot of geopolitical problem in the future. Not that we need any. But also, being in July, I couldn't help but wonder if this is just a distraction over the fact that Erdogan tried so hard in the last couple of years to have the Halkbank case dropped. So what this case is, it's also an important one. It always, well, I think in the American media, there's just so much happening that this gets lost in the noise. But in Turkey, this is a big thing. This is a big deal because in 2016, some reporters, it surfaced, it was a big scandal, that Erdogan's one of his best friends and allies, a Turkish-Iranian businessman by the name of Reza Zarrab, was involved in a scheme that was to avoid the sanctions imposed on Iran. What he was doing, he was working with this bank in Turkey, Halkbank, to do money laundering under the claim that he was buying food and medicine for the people of Iran. He was actually using the profits from oil and gas sales to buy gold. And that's precisely what is forbidden under the sanctions. So they were doing some very sketchy things financially. And this was known by not just the Halkbank higher ranking officials, but by Turkish government officials, like the finance minister, who is the son-in-law of Erdogan, was directly involved, and many other people related to Halkbank. In Turkey, a case opened, investigation started. This 2016 coincided with when Erdogan started becoming, really acting like an authoritarian dictator and started jailing everyone, all the opposition, by very, very sketchy and violent tactics, try to silence all opposition. He is paranoid at this point. And we know why, because the belief in Turkey is that he is directly implicated in this scheme. So all these Turkish government officials were getting money out of that, were getting bribed by Reza Zarrab doing this shady business. So Reza Zarrab got arrested in 2016, shortly after the scandal happened in Miami by FBI. He is being tried in the Southern District of New York, and he pleaded guilty in 2017. So that was a good thing, because now he's spilling the beans, right? And Erdogan has been trying so hard, first in the Obama administration, and he's still now trying to push the Trump administration. He's paying hundreds of thousands of dollars out of Turkish taxpayer money, so-called to improve our bilateral relationships with the US, but it's really just to lobby the administration to drop the case. So more recently in July, you all heard the news that Trump pressured Attorney General Barr to fire George Berman. George Berman is the prosecutor of that Halkbank case. So Reza Zarrab is already done, but there are all the other people connected there's an ongoing investigation and trial, and that's the one they're trying to kill. And all of this information, all the timeline with detailed links to everything, there's one article here that just gives it all. This Just Security seems to be a nonpartisan, it's not a media site, it's a nonpartisan advocacy for justice, apparently. And this was one of the articles that featured in July. And so I wonder if Erdogan, by picking up this this task of converting a museum into a mosque, is trying to divert attention, at least the public's attention in Turkey, away from the fact that, well, Trump's regime is almost over, and he still hasn't managed to kill that case. And maybe something is about to surface there. So that's just my take. There must be some personal reason for Erdogan to do it right now in the middle of this pandemic. Otherwise, I just don't know why. It just doesn't make sense. And I really recommend, this is a very, very long article, but very detailed on how it's just so scary. It's just so scary how much shady powers, corrupt people like Erdogan have influence over policy inside and outside of US. You know, it's really my hope that going into the poll this November, people will take our national security seriously and make that a main issue when they vote. I know when economy is bad, everybody is more worried about their paycheck than anything else, but this is just too big to miss. You know, since 2016, think about it. Iran has been doing this sanction evasion scheme, has not paid any of that money back, has not had any consequence, because this trial is still going on. And yeah, I mean, we need the truth. It's not just for Turkey. I think we need the truth about this. So that's where I will end my talk and take questions.